Live. Most clinicians still think locums is just a side hustle or a temporary fix. It's not. I sat down with Jordan from locums.com and we got into why locums is becoming a strategic career move, why autonomy matters more than ever, and what is actually separating the clinicians who are winning right now from the ones falling behind. This conversation is packed with value. Let's get into it. We're live. We're rolling. Appreciate you being here with me, Jordan. Let's kick this off and just give everyone a quick rundown on you. Locums.com. You know, what's been the best part of your week so far? And, you know, then I got a few things I want to jump into.
Well, let's see. Well, my name's Jordan. I'm from Locums.com. Locums.com is a resource hub and a tool set built for locum tenens providers and recruiters, and is a space for those two groups to find each other and find fantastic opportunities therein. We're not an agency. We're an open job board. All agencies work on locums.com, so that's just something important to remember. And let's see, the highlight of my week. I had a really awesome cheese board last night. That wasn't bad.
Tell me more about this cheese board. This is important.
I'm a blue cheese fan. You know, I like that. Got to have my crackers, a little bit of bacon, you know, some raisins and grapes and all that stuff. My girlfriend and I, we just love doing cheese boards. So we had wine, movie, and a cheese board last night. That was the highlight of my week.
Sounds exceptional. I appreciate you sharing that. So, well, let's jump into it. So from, you know, your vantage point and your perspective at locums.com, you're seeing both sides of healthcare staffing specific to locums, right? So you're seeing the clinicians and you're seeing recruiters. What's something happening in locum tenens right now that most people aren't paying attention to yet?
You know, I don't know if it's not most people are paying attention to it, but there are a couple things in here which are probably sliding under the radar a little bit. We can draw some more attention to. Providers are treating cross-state mobility as a much bigger advantage, and recruiters are valuing it much more. So we're talking about things like the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact. More providers are taking advantage of tools like this to practice across state lines, and it's not a small shift. I mean, right now, 24% of physicians hold 2 or more state licenses, and 16% have 2 active licenses, and 9% have 3 or more. But it's just that interstate license mobility is huge. We try to tell providers to stay in the know when it comes to licensing compact updates. New states are usually always joining these licensing compacts, and there are compacts that exist for multiple professions. So for APRNs and for doctors and for PAs, there are compacts that address state licensure across all these different professions. So those are very important things to keep in mind, because your new state license, you know, could take several weeks to get unless you're in a compact tied state, in which case it might only be a week or two. So that's very important. I think the other thing we want to add in there is, you know, providers aren't just looking for jobs. Locums are in huge demand right now, and providers are moving past just looking for a job and looking for a less frictional experience. You know, our most recent provider survey really found that there were a lot of frustrations with the operational side of locums as opposed to the clinical side of locums. Things like paying taxes, understanding licensing, we talked about that, your document organization, your assignment tracking, reminders for when shifts are going to start, how you compare your pay, how you plan for retirement and benefits. These are huge questions that a lot of locum tenens providers are asking before they even think about getting started. And it makes sense because a lot of these things are taken care of for you in a So there are a lot of questions surrounding that. How do I make this into a lifestyle for myself that I can manage effectively and easily? And, you know, I think, as a lot of us know, I think I'll finish on this, but facilities are still under a great deal of long-term staffing pressure. And it keeps locums relevant and important for recruiters and providers alike. We have a stat here that I think is really interesting. The AAMC says the U.S. could face a physician shortage of 86,000 physicians by 2036, which is just huge. I mean, this means facilities aren't just solving short-term gaps. Locum tenens is becoming a strategic piece of any major health organization's staffing strategy. And locums, you know, is going to remain part of that answer for the foreseeable future until, you know, some of these shortages are less severe. But I think those are definitely the strongest things that are the undercurrents in the locum world right now that we're seeing.
Yeah, what would you say, like, for the providers and the clinicians, like what are they missing when it comes to aligning themselves, like, with an opportunity, a situation, or an agency that will help provide them this value, whether it's the taxes, whether it's removing friction from the process? Like, what's the clinician missing from your perspective?
Well, so I think we made this point earlier. I think in terms of evaluating positions, locum providers are really having to think more like business owners than they may have been used to, you know, in their W-2 role. They're evaluating rate very critically. We always remind providers, don't just look at the overall rate. You want to know what the call expectations are. You want to know if there's any sort of travel and lodging compensation. Maybe there is some benefits tied to it, but rarely, since it's not a W-2 role, beyond that initial rate, because there is much more to the story usually. And I think, the other thing that physicians are looking at really as a part of locums is really how this system can address burnout and those operational administrative pressures that are so common in other roles. Locums is a fantastic way to address that. And for providers who are considering or are feeling a lot of symptoms of burnout, locum tenens is often one of the best ways to retain, their medicine practice and what they want to do, but in a setting that's going to be much friendlier to their lifestyle and put fewer undue burdens on them from an admin perspective. We have an interesting statistic here. This is the AMA shows that physician burnout was 43.2% in 2024. It's down from its peak, but it's still high. 71% of physicians that practice locum tenens report less symptoms of burnout, which is really just a staggering percentage right there. But I think that's something that definitely a lot of providers are thinking about when they evaluate positions. Is this going to allow me to operate like a business, free me up and allow me to work on my own terms? And lastly, is this going to get me away from those things that are actually driving me away from medicine? Those are all very important questions.
Yeah, one thing I'll just add to there, you hit on that is literally the number one reason why clinicians choose the locums lifestyle or working locums is autonomy. It is the flexibility in the autonomy over your time, the autonomy over your task, where you're working, when you're working, how long you're working for. Hey, guess what, Jordan? You don't have to wait 8 months for PTO. You can take it whenever you want because you have full autonomy. Money, of course, is super important too and is a huge driving factor. But you bring it all together, it's two things. It's autonomy and compensation that ultimately propel this locums lifestyle. And that's really what they want at the end of the day.
Our tagline is autonomy accelerated for a good reason. I mean, locums is that way to reclaim that autonomy in medicine. And there's a system, there's best practices, there's ways to go about doing it that make it easier. But that's definitely what people are looking for when it comes to this. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, no doubt. Well, one last question, and we'll get you out of here, my man. Obviously you guys interact with a lot of clinicians on your platform, right? And so if you put on the clinician lens, or even a recruiter, actually, let's not leave the recruiters out of this. It can be either or, right? So the clinician or recruiter in today's market, what is separating the ones who are winning right now from the ones who are, struggling to keep up?
Yeah. I think that it comes down to a couple of things. Number one is speed. What I hear from recruiters constantly is speed matters. Facilities are under pressure to get people in these roles quickly. Recruiters are under pressure to fill those roles quickly. And doctors, of course, want to move and don't want to be going back and forth on a lot of, unnecessary communication or duplicate efforts. Speed is really very, very key. So how do we achieve that? Speed is really achieved by organization in this case. There are a number of documents that you're going to need during the application process for a locum tenens position. Having those things laid out ahead of time, along with your experience, the previous locum tenens work you've done, the facilities associated with that, who you worked with there, your scope of work, your licenses, your DEA registration, your BLS certification. Having all those documents set aside in order makes your locum life a great deal easier down the road by having all those things organized. So I think, to put that in a nutshell, the winners are the ones who are ready to move. Recruiters who understand, their opportunity in front of them, forwards and backwards, understand the scope of work, what the facility is going to be like, what support staff are going to be there, what the compensation is travel and lodging included, all those questions. Having all those nailed down, of course, lets a recruiter communicate more effectively with a provider. And so I think we just keep coming back to organization as the main theme there. But there are a couple other points. The winners in these interactions are also going to be really, I think, reducing friction is probably the best way to put that. I mean, our survey makes that very, very clear. The pain points that providers keep running into are operational, taxes, licensing, credentialing, document management, and deadlines. The providers who are gaining traction are the ones who are staying organized, and the recruiters gaining traction are the ones who are making the process easier instead of harder. So some things that recruiters can do when you first talk to a provider, map out that process and set expectations ahead of time on that call to let them know what to expect from the process and at what pace they're going to move forward. And the last thing that we would just add in is winners are really aligned with a market that still needs flexible coverage. Like I said, there's a massive physician shortage. Providers who are open to travel, providers who are open to new settings and new locations, open to expanding their clinical skill set, who are comfortable in kind of shifting environments or comfortable setting their own priorities. These are the providers who are going to win at locums in the time ahead. And I think I'll just wrap up with this. It comes down to understanding what you want out of the locum tenens process, whether you want to be a full-time or a part-time practicer. And if you are a full-time locum tenens physician, then what systems and processes do you have in place to make sure your life is easy and organized? It's not impossible. It's very, very possible. And as a matter of fact, there are tons of physician coaches online who talk through different systems to help organize. Locums.com has a number of guides as well. But the information is definitely out there. My best advice is to just be very proactive, be very, very organized, and be open to a bit of a new adventure. And it also doesn't hurt that, like Justin just said here, locums comes, with a premium pay. Locum tenens providers can expect to earn 30% more and on an hourly basis, meaning they're only getting paid for the stuff they're actually doing and the work they're actually performing. So it's definitely a big draw. But I think it comes down to speed and organization is really the name of the game.
Yeah, no, 100% speed, without a doubt, especially on the recruitment agency side. And the other thing too, which I want to add on to is the organization, or really it's the foresight of to know, like, hey, what's coming upstream, right? That upstream thinking. And this is something we coach all the time with clinicians and providers, is like, hey, look, like one of the biggest, if you were to look at the recruitment process of locum tenens, like as of right now, the biggest friction process is still credentialing, right? Nobody has solved credentialing. You go any segment of healthcare staffing, it's right. The biggest friction point in the recruitment process. And so this is what we deploy and we coach and guide our clinicians on, is that, look, let's have some foresight here. Let's deploy the progress principle. What is the progress principle? Well, I'm glad you asked, Jordan. This is what it is. The progress principle is it's the small wins that build the momentum for the big wins. So the earlier we can start taking action on sending in, acquiring those credentialing items, it's going to make for a way smoother credentialing process, number one. Number two, you're going to be cleared and start your assignment on time when you want to start and not have any delays, or worst case scenarios, cancellations, because you weren't organized and you didn't start taking action on those credentialing items early in the process. But that's also ultimately, I'll just speak from my experience and my perspective, and our perspective is like, that's on us as an agency or a recruiter to guide our clinicians on, to inform them of what they aren't thinking about, for example, or maybe if they're new to it, they just don't understand that part of the process.
And I think, it's very important. We talk a lot about the importance of working with a good recruiter and a good agency. A skilled recruiter in the locum tenens space is absolutely invaluable, and is your guide, is your shepherd through the process. It can show you what to expect, what you're going to need. And also, I'm really glad you brought this up, planning ahead in terms of what that pipeline looks like. So if you are a full-time locums provider, you don't just want to have this one assignment locked down. You want to know what the next one is, and maybe the next one after that. And that's how you keep that work consistent, and that's how you keep that momentum going. Plan ahead, plan ahead, plan ahead. We can just keep saying that over and over and over again.
Yeah, in which, not to go way out of bounds here, but you just made me think of another thing. It's a real like uncertainty, right? In terms, if I'm a clinician, they're like, well, Jordan, what happens after my contract's up in 3 months? I'm going to be out of a job. Or what happens after my contract? Is like, well, no, there is actually a lot of continuity and stability in locums. You could work at the same hospital or the same clinic for a year, 2 years, 3 years if you want. But it's back to the point. It's like you need to understand, like, that's a very real thing. Extensions are very common, but it's part of that planning ahead. It's part of that foresight. It's part of that upstream thinking. Like, hey, well, what happens next? Don't wait till the end of your assignment. Let's start planning now, and you will have that continuity if you want it, or you don't. You want to go travel to Italy for 6 months, which doctors want to do, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, the opportunities it affords are really phenomenal. It just takes a little system to organize and manage it, but that's not impossible. It's pretty straightforward, actually. But yeah, plan ahead, stay fast, get organized, and the world is your oyster.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, so much gratitude for joining me on this week's Monday Market Update. Yeah, my pleasure, and we'll see you on the other side.